Hello, a very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, who are joining us today for an extra special webinar. I am privileged to welcome you all on board for the 50th BASL webinar of the first webinar series, which is conducted in English. The webinars have progressed to 4 series weekly in Sinhala, Tamil, and English, and on personal and professional development. You can be a part of these webinars by joining us on Zoom via the links that are made available to you each week, or by joining the live casting of it on YouTube. The wonderful thing about these webinars are they're available online for viewing at any time via the BASL YouTube channel. At a time, we are continuously advised to socially distance ourselves, be cautious about our interactions, and our productivity is not at its optimum due to various restrictions imposed on our activities. These webinars have shone through, bringing everyone together, connecting us from all parts of the country on one platform, though virtually. Our viewers from Sri Lanka as well as overseas range from law students to very senior attorneys at law, and they all benefit from these webinars, which provide a plethora of knowledge, not just to the legal fraternity, but also to members of other professions who have interests in particular subjects. In celebration of reaching the milestone of the 50th episode, the BSL of the English webinar series, we have asked some of our resource personnel, some of our panelists and members forming a cross section of the membership to share their thoughts. So they will now be expressing their thoughts on the first webinar series launched by the BASL. So let's all now watch the video comprising the compilation of their valuable thoughts.
Since its inception in 1974, the Bar Association has gone through to protect the rights of people and rule of law, and today is one of the most important days in the history of the Bar Association.
Congratulations to the Bar Association on reaching this milestone of 50 webinars. Congrats to the dynamic and energetic Secretary Rajiv. This webinars reaches the whole island and has resource persons from all over the island as well as outside. And I'm sure if it was closely followed, would increase the knowledge of our members, the professionalism and their ability.
BASL seminar series is a novel and innovative method to adapt to the pandemic. It's great to see the lawyers adapting to the digital platforms, which is our future.
This was started in 2020 and it has gone a long way and has provided a lot of opportunities for the other members of the profession and even to us to learn on various different topics of the law.
The BASL has successfully launched this webinar series and to overcome these challenges imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic and reaching out to all the members across the country as well as overseas. As a team, it was with great dedication and determination that we got this webinar series into place for the benefit of our members.
This webinar series not only given an opportunity to the members of the bar to enhance their legal knowledge, but also given an opportunity to able practitioners to share their wisdom and experience with the other members of the bar.
It's my great pleasure and honor to forward this congratulatory message to the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, as today they are very successfully completing the 50th webinar in the webinar series that they have started in the year 2020.
This is a very progressive steps taken by the Bar Association to enhance the knowledge of the members, which I'm sure undoubtedly and immensely benefited the members, as I said, both juniors and seniors alike, both who are living in the country.
Mr. Rachu Amarasuriya added the concept of webinars to his action plan in October 2019, and now it became a part of the culture of BASL continuous legal education.
The one of the plus factors that we can say that came out of the COVID, which in all other aspects brought disastrous results.
This was a timely initiative by the BASL in an era where physical meetings have almost become impossible. Also, this has been very helpful for the continuous professional development of our members, especially in the context where continuous professional development may become compulsory in the future.
It is a remarkable achievement by the team under the able leadership of Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya and the efficient committees and subcommittees set up. Lawyers work tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure precision. Well done. Keep up the good work.
As a member of the BASL, I am proud that it is one of the, if not the most adapted organization in delivering its presence and service to its membership in COVID times. The webinar series is an unprecedented success in this regard, and I am humbled and honored to have been able to moderate a webinar. All the best.
I find the richness of the entire series of webinars which could provide invaluable enrichment to elevate the knowledge, skills and attitudes of the membership as well as the other audience.
We had the benefit of continuous legal education on every Saturdays. We had the benefit of getting onto digital platforms, which will be the future of our profession to come. And we also had the benefit of educating ourselves free of charge at our homes at our convenience.
A feature of the Bar Association webinar series is that it is given free of charge and is available to any lawyer in any part of this country.
Especially the outstation lawyers are benefited very much by this program to upgrade their legal knowledge in various subjects. Question and answer session is very useful to us. I hope that more interesting topics will be introduced in future too. I am very happy that last week a new edition of webinar series was launched in Tamil language too.
On a personal note, having participated in these webinars and also having watched most of them, it has provided me the opportunity to update my knowledge on the recent developments of the law.
I would like to congratulate Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, Secretary of Bar Association of Sri Lanka, for initiating this webinar series. This is very useful for lawyers to develop their knowledge while staying at home during this pandemic situation.
As a junior lawyer, I must say this was a great opportunity for me. I was able to gain a lot of knowledge in the different field of law.
BASL stood up to its responsibility in delivering quality, continuous legal education in a novel way for seniors and juniors alike, free of charge in all 3 languages. I was honored to be able to contribute in this endeavor and hope this trailblazing venture will go from strength to strength. Thanks.
I personally find webinar series conducted by the BASL very informative, enlightening and inspiring.
These webinars have proven to be quite interactive, knowledgeable and insightful, and it has greatly improved my knowledge on the law and procedure.
As well as in a relaxed moment, we will have the chance to attend again on the YouTube channel, and it is very essential.
As a criminal and civil practitioner, the several webinar series are helpful to my cases.
Not only has Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya and the seminar committee gone above and beyond to ensure that this webinar series is executed every week with timely topics. They have also been successful in organizing this webinar series in both Sinhala and Tamil language.
Congratulations to the webinars committee on the 50th webinar of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Since 2020, the webinars have brought together lawyers from many fields sharing their experience and knowledge on the law. Congratulations.
So grateful for the Sri Lanka Bar Association for creating this platform.
for us to share our knowledge and also for us to learn a lot.
This series has covered a variety of topics ranging from substantive law to the procedural aspects. It has also provided a database of knowledge which can be accessed from any part of the world by anyone. We must thank Mr. Rajiv Amarsurya and his team for this great initiative.
Rajiv not only commenced webinar series in English language, he went a step forward and commenced webinar series in Sinhala language. And I too got the opportunity to be a speaker at the first Sinhala webinar series. And also I got the opportunity to be a speaker at the English third webinar series. Rajiv, for the benefit of the practitioners of North and East, he commenced Tamil webinar series last week. At this memorable and historical moment, I like to congratulate the former president of the Bar Association, Mr. calling into this President's Council, under whose regime the webinar series were commenced, and also the present president of the Bar Association, Mr. Salia Peris, President's Council, who is guiding, directing the webinars, and special thanks to Mr. Rajiv and his hard-working team, and I wish them all success in their future endeavor.
BASL Seminars Committee 2021-2022 extends its sincere gratitude to the BASL Management Committee and to all the expert panelists, moderators, compeers, viewers, and the BASL staff for their support in making this webinar series a success. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Watching and listening to the many lovely comments our valuable members and panelists expressed was truly fulfilling. I would be failing in my duty if I do not reiterate the fact that the webinar series was a brainchild of Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, the Secretary of the Bar, and thank him especially for this great initiative. I, on behalf of the entire legal fraternity and the other beneficiaries, would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Secretary's Office, which organized these webinars throughout last year, and the Seminars Committee, that is the Chairman, Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, the Convener, Mr. Pasidhu Silva, and the co-conveners, Mr. Pandula Vanyarachi, Mr. Oshan Uberatna, Ms. N. Devananda, and Ms. Nikini Pitigama, who organizes the current webinars. I also express my gratitude to the previous management committee of the Bar Association, during whose time these webinars began, and the current management committee of the Bar Association, that is Mr. Salia Peris, President's Council, the President of the Bar, Mr. Anuramat Degoda, President's Council, the Deputy President, Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, the Secretary, Mr. Rajint Pereira, the Treasurer, and Mr. Pasidhu Silva, the Assistant Secretary. I also thank the technical teams, the compeers, and all others who helped to make these webinars a tremendous success. Moving on, as I stated before, today marks the 50th webinar of the first series. And to celebrate this important milestone, we have a star-studded panel comprising some of the most eminent seniors in our profession. Today's topic of discussion is an enthralling path, building a professional practice. An enthralling path, building a professional practice. I'm sure this will be a very interesting and a very practical webinar, which will be based on a lot of experiences and sound advice by today's distinguished panel. While these legal luminaries need no introduction as their reputation precedes them, it is only right and dutiful of me to welcome them on board with a brief introduction of them. First and foremost, I welcome Mr. Faiz Mustafa, President's Counsel. Mr. Mustafa obtained his Bachelor of Laws from the University of Ceylon. He has followed a diploma in international law from the Hague Academy, Netherlands, and thereafter followed a practical course in international relations in New York. He was the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions at the time he resigned from the Attorney General's Department. He is the former chairman of the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, former member of the Law Commission, former chairman of the Finance Commission, and a former deputy president of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. He was the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka in the UK from 2002 to 2005 and the chairman of the Commission for the Elimination of Discrimination and Monitoring of Fundamental Rights. Mr. Mustafa was a member of the University Council, Southern Eastern University of Sri Lanka, and is a member of the National Group of Sri Lanka to the Permanent Court of Arbitrators in The Hague. He was called to the Inner Bar in 1988. Next, I would like to welcome on board Dr. Carnegies. He's a President's Counsel, having taken silk in January 1988. He's a barrister at law of Lincoln's Inn and a graduate in law from the University of London. He was conferred the degree of Doctor of Laws by the University of Colombo in November 2017. He completed 52 years of active practice at the Sri Lankan Bar. He has an extensive practice on the civil side and specializes in several areas of law, including arbitration. He is a member of the Law Commission of Sri Lanka from 1994 till 2009. He has spearheaded many committees that were involved in the drafting of many items of legislation. Dr. Carnegies was the chairman of the Advisory Commission on Intellectual Property Law and also presided as the chairman of the Advisory Commission on Company Law. He is a founder director and a member of the Council of Management of the Institute for the Development of Commercial Law and Practice and a founder director of the ICLP Arbitration Center. He is also a lecturer and an examiner for several courses conducted by the Institute for the Development of Commercial Law and Practice. He was a visiting lecturer at the Sri Lanka Law College and a visiting lecturer at the Faculty of Law, University of Colombo. He also serves as a moderator and supervisor at the Faculty of Law, University of Colombo, and the Department of Law, University of Peradeniya. Dr. Carnegies is a member of the faculty board of the Faculty of Law, University of Colombo, and served as a member of the Council of the University of Colombo. He is also a member of the Board of Trustees of the National Trust Sri Lanka and its current president. He is also the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the All Ceylon Hindu Congress. He holds several other positions of responsibility in advisory and other capacities in public and private bodies. He has written extensively, lectured and presented papers both locally and abroad on several subjects touching his areas of practice. I also welcome on board Mr. Gamini Marapana, President's Counsel. Mr. Marapana is an honors graduate in law from the University of Peradeniya. He began his legal career in the chambers of Dr. H.W. Jayawardena, Queen's Counsel. He also worked with Mr. A.C. Gunaratna, Queen's Counsel, Mr. Siri Pereira, Queen's Counsel, and Mr. Eric Amarasinghe, President's Counsel. He is a specialist in civil litigation and now in criminal litigation as well. He has over 50 years of active practice. He has appeared in many landmark cases which have had very significant constitutional and national impact. He was a lecturer at the Sri Lanka Law College and a member of its Board of Examiners. He was, for a brief period, a member of the Council of the Legal Education as well. Mr. Marapana has held the post of Executive Director of Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, Director of the Tokyo-based Asian Productivity Organization, Chairman of the National Sports Council, Director of the Sri Lankan Airlines, Director of the Maharaja Group of Companies, and Director of Holcim Lanka Limited. At present, he is the Chairman of the Colombo Port City Economic Commission. Mr. Marapana is an old boy and a head prefect of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia. He was a member of the first 11 cricket team as the wicket-keeper, opening batsman, and was also the captain of the college first 11 hockey team. He was awarded the Victoria Gold Medal for the best all-round student. Let me also welcome on board Mr. Rianzi Arzakularatne. Mr. Arzakularatne holds an LLB from the University of Ceylon and an LLM in commercial law from the University of Bristol. He was admitted to the bar as an attorney at law in the year 1974 and admitted as a solicitor of the Supreme Court of England in the year 1980. He was also admitted as a barrister of the Australian Capital Territory in 1991, and he was appointed a President's Counsel in 1998. He joined the Attorney General's Department in 1975 and headed the criminal section of the Attorney General's Department as an additional Solicitor General in 2003. He functioned as an examiner at the Sri Lanka Law College. Mr. Rianzi Arzakularatne, President's Counsel, was appointed a member of the governing board of the Office of National Unity and Reconciliation in April 2015 and was a legal advisor to the Ministry of Fisheries and the Ministry of Environment. He was also the Director General of the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery and corruption and was the chairman of the Hatton National Bank. Now let me welcome the moderator of the day, Mr. Mohammed Adam Ali, attorney at law. Mr. Mohammed Adam Ali graduated from the Faculty of Law, University of Colombo, with honors and from the Sri Lanka Law College with first-class honors. He was admitted as an attorney at law in 1994. Mr. Adam Ali also graduated from the Chartered Institute of Marketing, UK, and is an awarded lecturer in marketing for 3 decades. He practices in many areas of law, including commercial, labor, construction, family, and writs. He holds the post of director in several companies. Mr. Adam Ali is also a leading thespian, an actor, director, and producer of over 50 stage plays and 9 films, a TOYP awardee, and an accomplished orator. Right, without further ado, I now hand over the proceedings of today to the moderator, Mr. Adam Ali, to take you through a very interesting webinar full of personal stories and journeys, which undoubtedly will unravel an enthralling path for you, which will assist you all in building a professional practice. Over to you, Mr. Adam Ali. Have an interesting one.
Thank you, Uma. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Uma, thank you again for your very kind words of introduction. Welcome to you all to this, the 50th in this webinar series. And I must say a hearty congratulations to the Bar Association and to Rajiv and his team for having continued this tradition now of webinars for almost a year. I am truly honored to be a part of this webinar, for one being the 50th webinar, a landmark one, and I'm doubly honored considering the galaxy of personalities that I have on this panel, 4 people who can be considered truly pillars of this profession. Very rarely do we have a composition of President's Council of this stature, people who've been respected not only for their mastery in the craft of advocacy, their knowledge of the law, the contribution they've made to the development of the law, but also for their standards of ethics and integrity in the profession, and perhaps most importantly for the guidance they've given to the generations below in continuing the traditions of the bar. What we are going to do, and we thought perhaps the best learning experience we could get from this forum would be to run this program not as a formal webinar with presentations, but more in the style of a fireside conversation, if you will, where I will toss questions to our panelists and probe their journey through the profession. And we hope that through the stories that they share with us this evening, we can take back great learning material on building a professional practice. I also invite questions from the audience. I think you can write in on the chat, and we'll try and accommodate as many of them as we can in this session. So the 4 panelists have been introduced to you. And what I thought we'll start with is the question of what brought them to the law. Let's start with the most senior of the President's Council with us, Mr. Faiz Mustafa. 3 of them, Mr. Mustafa, Mr. Carnegies, and Mr. Marapana, come from legal backgrounds with fathers who were eminent lawyers in their time. Mr. Mustafa, could you tell us what brought you to this profession? Was it a conscious choice, a goal, and had it been a goal for a long time? You entered the profession in the Attorney General's department. Any particular reason for that? And we'd like to hear your story on that, please.
Thank you, Adam. Don't expect a very profound answer, because it is partly accidental, partly deliberate. In fact, when I initially went to school, my neighbor apparently was working in the railway department as an engine driver. I was fascinated by his uniform, mainly by his uniform, particularly by his black tunic, white shirt, and he's a very flashy character riding around on a motorbicycle. So I wanted to be an engine driver. Initially, when I started life, I wanted to be an engine driver. Then it so happened that in the 6th form, we had to make a choice with arts or science. Apparently at that time, the education system was such that was the moment of choice. Everybody wanted to become a doctor at that time. It was fashionable. And I was put into science class. But I flinched at the idea. I was told that I got to dissect cockroach and rats. That put me off. Then there was the additional bonus that if you go to the arts class, apparently if you do Latin, once a week, the teacher who was known to the governor, Lord Solbury, would take you for a swim. So that was the attraction. It was purely accidental. I walked across to the arts class. Having remained there for some time, of course, then I got to the university entrance. And then the question arose whether I should do law or history. My father was very keen that I should do history because he told me that the law is a very, very narrow course. I wanted me to do either classics or law. But then I thought another 10 years, a long stint, and I decided to do law. So that's how I joined the profession. Joining the attorney department was also purely accidental. In about my 6th month of practice, I did an assignment. It was before Justice C.S. Fernando. He, of course, knew my father. And in the very first case, I objected to some evidence being that I can't remember what it was. Mr. Wakely Paul was prosecuting. The judge called me to chambers and told me, I say, you have a clear mind, but you speak so fast, nobody can understand you, not even the jury. I hadn't the heart to tell him that it was my very first case in the assizes. And although my mouth was moving, no sound was coming out. Anyway, he asked me that I'd like to join the attorney's department. I started to think about it. Of course, I must disclose the fact that he was a friend of my father. Then he asked me to send a formal application, which I did. And within about a week, I was asked to come for an interview. At the interview, this is how recruitment was done those days, I was the sole applicant. And I walked in, I was introduced as Musa's son. And one of the panel members told me, or openly said, that this is the boy that Justice Vijay Tilak had spoken to me about. He was the district judge at Carnegie at that time. So I walked in, and I was taken in within a week. And that's why I ended up in the attorney department. In the attorney department, I was there for a couple of years. And then when I was a deputy Solicitor General, there was another deputy who apparently had delayed some files. And as a merciful alternate dismissal, he was demoted. So I got ahead of him. I was not concerned because I was much younger to him. But of course, there was an election, the new government coming to power, he submitted a memorandum saying that he was politically victimized. Of course, it didn't bother me at all. But in a moment of weakness and bravado, I said, if it is all, if the promotion interfered with, I would leave the department. I never ever expected it would happen. But alas, it did. So I had no choice but to move out, having paid 1 month's salary in leave of notice. So that's how I ended up in the private bar.
What a fascinating story of the start. Let's throw the same question to the youngest in terms of seniority in silks in our panel, Ms. Asukularatna. What about yourself? You did not come from a family which had lawyers in it. Was the decision to take to the bar a difficult one? Was it a scary thought? What made you come in to this profession? Mr. Asukularatna, sir? Perhaps Ms. Asukularatna is having a connection issue. Yeah. We'll come back to him.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm here.
Yes, you're here. Yes, please. Please tell us.
Sorry. Actually, Adam, I'm the fourth of a family of 4 children. I had three elder brothers. All of them ended up entering various science faculties. So I, being the fourth, my parents naturally wanted me to pursue science subjects, and I pursued science subjects for my A-levels. I had a big problem in passing the A-levels. First 2 shies I came down. I couldn't enter the university. Then at that time, the law college had 2 courses, the proctor's course and the advocate's course. The proctor's course you can enter with 5 credits. So I had not heard of law college also. One day when I went to see a friend of mine, again preparing for the A-levels, his sister was filling up some application form. My friend was not there. I was chatting with the sister and asked her, she's Priyani Andrade, some of you may have heard. I asked Priyani, what are you feeling? She said, I'm applying to to the law college. So I said, can I also apply? So I looked at the form, with 5 credits, you can apply. So I told Priyani, I also want to apply. And she said, if you like this, you take this form, I'll get my father to get another form. So then I applied and became a proctor student. So still I did not want to give up my anxiety to enter the medical faculty and become a doctor like my brother. So I sat for the 3rd time also. At the same time, I sat for the proctor's preliminary also. 3rd time A-levels, proctor's preliminary. That time I got through both, but I didn't pass physics. So I passed the proctor's first exam also. Then I switched to advocates because I had 3 A-level subjects by then. I switched to advocates. I couldn't enter medical faculty because I failed physics. I couldn't enter any other science faculty because I didn't have to have sufficient marks. So therefore, the best alternative was to continue at law college. So I continued and became an advocate. We were the last batch of students who sat for the final examination of admission of advocates. And I must say I'm proud to be associated with this distinguished panel for the reason Mr. Marapana was one of my lecturers at law college. So I never thought at that time I'll ever sit together with him in a panel or reach any height in this profession as such. So that is how I ended up at law college. And while at law college, I registered for my external LLB degree in the university. And after passing the advocate's exam, I passed the LLB also. So then thereafter I apprenticed with Mr. Erdi Pereira and with Mr. Larita Tulatmatari. And after that, we were hardly engaged. We were just going to the chamber and, doing a little bit of work. So everybody else was applying to the Attorney General's department. I did not know where the Attorney General's department was. So I also applied. And the interviews were conducted then at the Ministry of Justice, which is a part of our courts now. So I went there, and first time I stepped into the Attorney General's department is to accept my appointment. Then only I saw the Attorney General's department. There I stayed for 27 years. And so there, after some, when I became the head of criminal department, I was certain I am not going to end up as Attorney General, because Mr. C.R. De Silva was ahead of me, who was a few months junior to me in age. So I thought no point in continuing. At 55, I stepped out of the AG's department and started my practice. So that's my story of taking to law.
Fascinating journey from a heart set on science to a career in the law. Mr. Carnegies, you were a science student too, I believe. And so the decision to do law must also carry a story for you. Maybe hear your story of what brought you to the profession and a quick sketch of your journey through it. Mr. Carnegies, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry,
and we can see you brightly.
My microphone, sorry.
Yes.
Well, I have a short story and a long story. Short story is my entry. It's all because I told you something about it this morning. Short story is my entry to the legal profession it's a bit scandalous, in the sense that though my father was a leading advocate in Jaffna, he was busy with his practice and his politics. He was a founder member of the United National Party there, and we were left to ourselves very much. My sister, of course, was the brilliant child. I had a natural inclination to scientific subjects, I discovered, and to photography and music and things like that. So I was destined to, because those days you had to become a doctor, proctor, or coolie or clerk. That's all we have, not a spread of subject that you could select. So since being a science background, those who did arts were called commercial class boys and were looked down upon. So you had to go into the science stream. So I was then science mean becoming a doctor. But anyway, I could not become a doctor because you had to get your 5 credits and I only got 4 credits. So I got admitted to the Faculty of Science in Colombo. I was way into that faculty, becoming a Bachelor of Science, when an interesting incident took place, which resulted in my father pulling me out of the faculty and packing me out to London. That was... that is a scandalous part as to what happened. I don't know if I should say it or no. As it happened, I'll tell you. As it happened, I said music, dancing was a subject. And one fine morning, the Sunday Observer had a photograph on the front page with Mr. Carnegie and a young burger lady hugging and dancing on New Year's Eve, 31st night. So my father, somebody sent it to him. He pulled me out. And that was in the year 1960 when Mrs. Bandaranaike had come to power. And he didn't want me to stay in the country. So he packed me out to England to do medicine. And at that time you had to go by boat. And all the money we got was £3.50. You see, with that I was packed off. And I went to London. A very interesting thing happened. That was the days of the flower power and ban the bomb. You had the the flower children, Adam, you might know about it.
Yes.
They used to meet at Trafalgar Square, and I got involved in that. And there was a little skirmish, and we were rounded up and ended up at Bow Street Magistrate. And there I met a young gentleman from Malaysia called Natchatram, a big family, very rich people who are doing all were at Lincoln's Inn. So we got to talk about rights and things like that. So I got involved, let's do law. So I wrote to my dad, and he had given up on me by then. So I had to be recommended to be admitted to Lincoln's Inn, and he got his friend Justice Sriskanda Raja to give a letter of recommendation. He's a good boy, good family background, and so I applied, and that's why I joined Lincoln's Inn. And there I came back. And when I came back, of course, I was in the law. And of course, I didn't know any. I mean, the father knew he wanted me to. First thing, he brought me to Colombo and showed me, if you want to practice, you must be at Hulstop, and showed me Crown Hotel. You get a room there and stay. It's a terrible place. I decided I'm not going to stay in that place. And out of that, the story, that's how I got into the law. And of course, at that time, my good friend, Mr. Tiwanka Vikram Singh, a whole lot of us were there, Nalina Basic, Bednile Tambi, there were about 12 of us also, had a good time there and came back. That's how I got into the law.
What a fascinating story, and a humorous one. So clearly the fascination that you had for skirmishes is something that you've carried into the bar as well, because you get the opportunity to raise a skirmish inside the courtroom at every turn. Thank you, Mr. Carnegies. Mr. Marapada, you had a very colorful sporting career in school. I think the cricket, hockey, swimming, I believe there weren't enough sports that for you to do. What made you look to a profession that required so much reading and bookwork, considering that you were a man of the outdoors?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know what the law involved when I got into law. My father was a lawyer practicing in Ratnapur at the time. Then I was playing so many games at St. Thomas's College. And my father wanted me to get into university. I had no idea that I would be able to get into the university. And the strange thing was, somewhere my final year in college, the warden called me to his office and said, Arapana, fill this form. And that was a school leaving form. So I asked him, am I getting sacked? So Warden Seram said, no, you're not getting sacked. Mr. Chandra Safta wants to offer you a job. So he said, he's coming. I said, sir, I'm not interested in a job. My father will never allow it. He wants me to study further. Then Warden Seram said, well, Chandra Safta is coming tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock or something. You come and meet him. So I went to the office. I didn't fill the form. I went to the office, and there Mr. Shafter was there. He was a hockey fanatic, Chandra Shafter. He was at Carson's, I believe, a director or something at Carson's. And he told me, Marpana, why don't you join our company? I said, he told me, you can be a junior executive, and it's a very good job, this, that, and the other. And he also told me, I assure you, in 3 years, you learn more than your father. My father was then a judge. He said, you learn more than your father in 3 years. So I said, no, sir, that will never happen, because I can't, my father will never allow it. So he was very disappointed, and then he said, okay. Then I sat the university entrance, and with all my sports, till the results came, I was very nervous. If you have done hurdling, my entry to the university was the hurdle went this way, that way, that way. Before it fell, I crossed it, and I entered as an external student. You see, at that time, external students were students who were not given residence, halls of residence. But we had lectures. We could follow lectures. And I still remember, I delayed in going to the university. Then when one day, Mr. Raja Gunasekara, who happened to know my father, he phoned my father was at Kagal, the district judge Kagal. He phoned and I answered the phone. He asked me, aren't you coming? So I said, where? He said, why the lectures have started? I said, no, I am coming tomorrow. I'll come tomorrow. And the next day I went. So that's why I got into the university. But fortunately, we were, as external students, we were not allowed to represent the university in sports. That was a blessing. I think my father was the most happiest person in that regard. So then I didn't play any games in the university. I just did my thing. I passed well. And then I came to law college. And at law college, I found that this system of examinations, I just couldn't understand it. You get a question paper of 10 questions or something, you have to answer 8 and answer all the questions in every segment. So it's not a test of ability or knowledge. It was just cramming the sections of the Civil Procedure Code, the Penal Code, all sorts of things you have to just muck up. It never appealed to me at all. But anyway, I did the exam. Then that's where I really started. Then I went to Dr. H.W. Jayawardana's chambers. What a simple man he was. I went the first day. I was asked to come at 8 o'clock, report to his chambers. I went 10 minutes early. I had a scooter then, Vespa, which I had in the university. And I parked it and I was waiting for 8 o'clock to come and to go and ring the bell. Then comes my friend, Mr. Priyantha Pereira, later judge of the Supreme Court. Priyantha was in a tie and trousers. I was just shirt sleeves. So I asked Priyantha, I said, Priyantha, must you wear a tie to just go and see a senior lawyer? So he said, I don't know, Gamini. I came in a tie. But anyway, I'll pull my tie out. I mean, that's the first act of kindness that someone else, lawyers has shown me. I never forgot that all these years. He pulled his tie out and put it in his pocket. And at 8 o'clock, we rang the bell. Came out Mr. Jayawardena. He was not Dr. Jayawardena. Then came out Mr. Jayawardena. What a wonderful man. He was in a sarong, short sleeve shirt. And he said, come. And he put us completely at ease. And his chambers were really superb place. And I thoroughly enjoyed my stay there. Then when I passed out, as usual, everybody takes assignments. I took 2 assignments. First was an assignment, murder case before Justice Veeramantri, Flagstaff Street in Fort. The court was there. He was the Commissioner of Excise then. And we did the trial. Cecil Gunawardena prosecutor. Cecil Gunawardena prosecutor, later High Court judge. Then my man was guilty of culpable homicide. He got 6 years or something. Then Cecil was telling me, Damini, put a plea in this case. I said, Cecil, I took this case not to put a plea, not to earn the 50 rupees that you assigned counsel get, but because to get stand on my feet and get some experience. So if my client doesn't want to put a plea, I don't want to put a plea. So that case went. Then second case I got, also assignment, robbery case, before Justice Dikretsa. This was an interesting case. 6 accused, and I was assigned for all 6 accused. Then I went to the jail and met the accused. They said, some people said, sir, make a vadak naya karala, api me vadi kara, api me varadhikarya venawa, itin loku danuwang hamba venawa, api varadhikarya kiyamu. One fellow, the first accused said, no, I'm not going to plead guilty. I want to contest this case. So what to do? I filed a motion and I told Justice Kretzer, sir, I can't appear for all these accused. There's a conflict now among these people. I didn't tell what the conflict was. He said, will you please assign other counsel for the other people? I will represent the first, because he's the one who wanted to contest the case. So I was keen on appearing for him because I could get on my feet. Then Justice Kretzer assigned counsel for others. The trial started. Cecil Gunawardena, first witness, called the inspector. Inspector came and said that he went and arrested my client when he was bathing, and he recovered some jewelry from him. He said he had a ring which he wore. He took it out and gave it. He had a chain. He took it out and gave it. And all these things were marked P1 to P15 or something. Recovered from my man. Then Cecil Gunawardena said he recovered certain other items of jewelry from a jeweler. He marked those also. Then the next witness was the jeweler. So the jeweler came, got in, and gave the evidence and said, and he marked this P15 to P20 from the jeweler. So when I cross-examined the jeweler, I first showed him P15. He said, I gave this. Then I showed him that ring. Now, did you give this also? He said, yes, sir, I was wearing this. So now the inspector said, the inspector recovered the ring from my client's hand. He said, then I showed all the jewelry that was supposed to have been recovered from my client. And the jeweler said, all these I gave. Even the chain I was wearing, I gave it to him. Then I asked Justice Brett, sir, Millard, is there any purpose in going on with this case? Because this is a frame-up. And to his lordship's credit, he said, gentlemen of the jury, do you want to go on with this mockery? So they said no. And all the fellows got out of the case. Then case ended. Cecil Gunawardena comes the next day with the application form for me to join the Attorney General's department. He said, I have spoken to the Attorney General. Please, Gamini, fill this and join the department. So I said, Cecil, thank you very much. 9 to 5 job is not for me. And I can't live on these government salaries. So please, I thank you for your kindness. I don't want to join this government service or any department. And so that's how I got stuck at private practice. But I enjoyed every second of it. I had very good seniors. I mean, I remember with gratitude Dr. H.W. Jayawardena. Then I worked a lot with Mr. A.C. Gunaratna. He was a marvelous gentleman. And he just, his preparation was superb. Any case, he has just one sheet of paper. And everything in the case is in that. And then he conducts the case. It was beautiful. It was, I thoroughly enjoyed working with him. Then I worked a little while I did a few cases with Mr. Siri Perera, Queen's Counsel. Superb. His style of cross-examination was superb. In all 3 or 4 cases I did, every case he crashed. Every case he crashed. Two witnesses, case crashes. And I also admired greatly Mr. Eric Kamersi. He was a wonderful cross-examiner. I mean, his style was superb. So I learned a lot from these gentlemen. I'm ever grateful to them. And when I started on my own, then I started in Ratnapura because my father's connections were there. Naturally, I got a lot of briefs from there to begin with. And one day I went and told Mr. Jayawardena, sir, I'm unable to come to your chambers because I'm getting a little work in Ratnapura. He said, Gamini, the whole trick in this is to get on your feet. So if you're getting work anywhere, you go, don't come and sit by my side and waste your time. So that's the caliber of people they were. So it's wonderful. And then I went on from there. Then after some time, my son became a lawyer. Then he was telling me, why are you traveling doing this journey every day? And we worked. I used to go to Ratnapura with Mr. Chandra Semiratna, late Mr. Chandra, President's Counsel, late Mr. W.K. Premaratna, and myself. We used to take turns and drive. So my son told me, 4 hours on the road. No, what is this? You better chuck this thing up. You are now getting on in years. So then I thought, better to give it up. And I just moved to Colombo and started doing the appeal work. And now here I am. But I became a criminal lawyer by accident.
In fact, that's a story I want to come to as to the change from your focus in the district court to the criminal court a little later. In fact, I thought when you mentioned the treks to Ratnapura, we will have an interjection from Mr. Mustafa, because earlier on in discussion, he had some comments to make on that. And I'd certainly invite any of you in the panel to add a bit of color to the evening with your interjections if you feel inclined to do so. Moving on, Mr. Mustafa, your specialization in the appellate courts, was that again a deliberate decision? You have come to be known by the tagline at one time, "Stay Order Mustafa." Does that have a story? Perhaps even Mr. Carnegies might want to add to that tagline.
No. I didn't want to cause any hemorrhage.
That's an old story, Adam. But actually, my choice of appellate court was purely by accident there also, because it was purely language. When I left the department, I hardly knew anybody, any proctors as such. But at that time, there was this, you would take work directly. But I had a lot of support from the Candy Bar. They looked upon me as Ape Kolla. So they used to send me a lot of work, and that was naturally in the appeal court. So not by choice, I naturally find myself in the appellate court. That's how I ended up in the appellate court. But of course, I used to do a lot of district court work as well. I used to be junior to Mr. Tyagalima QC, Mr. Nataraja QC, and Mr. Eric Kavarasinghe. If I can relate a story, if you don't mind, there's a moral also. I say to the juniors, don't just carry books. Get involved in the case. Learn the case. And it may be a time where you may suddenly called upon. And then they say that the senior's misfortune can be an opportunity for the junior. So there was a case in which I was junior to Mr. Amarasinghe. You opposed to Mr. Tyagalima QC, Mr. E.M. Kandakar, and battery of legal counsel on the other side. Galaxy of them.
In the district court, was it?
The district court. Right. What happened was suddenly, I got a message from Mr. Amarasinghe saying he was held up in the other court. Mr. Tyagalima, as you know, was very ferocious. He said this case must be taken up today, and we had no choice. And the case came up before Mr. K.C.D. Alvis. But there was an adage about Mr. K.C.D. Alvis. He, as you know, he could hear only he would hear only one side of a case at a time. I think Carnegies knows what I mean. Then what happened was, when the case was taken up, Mr. Tyagalima raised certain issues. I plucked up my courage. I was actually very trembling, but I got up and plucked up my courage and objected to the issues. Fortunately for me, several of the issues were ruled out. In fact, he was so annoyed, he called me a young pup. I said, better be a young pup than a toothless old dog. Then it was very bruising, very grueling. Issues were all ruled out. And I had also the courage to move for costs. So we wanted 10,000 rupees cost, and we adjourned. As I came out, Mr. Tyagalima has a habit of lighting up his cigar. I had a friend called Michael, I believe. I think it's Michael, isn't he? He was pulling out his gown and lighting up. I would avoid him and go the other way. Panikar, that's right. He called me and said, "Ajay Face, come here." I thought I was going to get a dressing down. He put his arm around me and said, "Well done, young man." That's the caliber of the seniors we had.
All right. Wow. Wonderful story. Mr. Carnegies, your choice of the commercial law area as a specialization, again, did it come to be through a deliberate course?
No. In fact, when I was doing the bar, one of my favorite subjects was criminal law. In our time, they used to give classes for subjects. So I loved it, and I got the first class in criminal law at the Lincoln's Inn Bar, and was placed first in the Commonwealth. Justice Ramanathan used to say that from the bench also. You did that, now you have gone somewhere else. What happened was, when I came back, as Damini said, my first, we used to collect dock briefs. You go from place to place to collect dock brief, what they call, when assizes are sitting, you go there and sit there, and then they give you. One of my First priest was before Justice Veeramantri. I took over in 1966. He was then a commissioner of excise. And I got a brief of a Tamil fellow, a murder charge, and then two others with counterfeiting and all that, where Lalit Rodrigo and myself were, together. So in this murder trial, murder thing, so we used to, those days we used to go to the Velikara prison and they'll treat you well, they'll put a white tablecloth, they have a brass vase with paper roses in it, and they'll give you tea. They respected lawyers. I don't know, Gamini, you had that experience. They respect you well. And so I asked the fellow, he said, no, the charge was murder. He was supposed to cut his landlord's throat. His story he told me was that that landlord is a bad fellow. He comes home drunk. There, landlord means in the slums. Kottahenapatta. So he ill-treats his wife. So I help her with the cooking and all that. One day I was peeling potatoes with her, and I must have been carrying on with her, I think. So this fellow came and he tried to beat this lady, and I said, "Poda!" And by chance the knife cut his throat. So that was the story. So we were told that you are presumed innocent, no? So my defense was before Justice Veeramantri. He was not justice then; he was commissioner. So I started those days. We could wear the bands and gowns at the original court. We used to wear bands and gowns and barrister's gown and all that. So you are going on halfway through court, adjourned for a while, and Justice Veeramantri called me to his chambers and told me, young man, at the rate you are going, evidence, your man might be in some trouble. So tell him, over him complete culpable officer, not to want to murder. He said, I'll deal with it. So I said, okay, sir. And then adjournment. Those days, I forgot who the state council was, because both of you have to go there. They don't see. Not like these days, we have to both be there, otherwise they won't see you, I don't know, somewhere down the way, they forgotten, I think. So I went and asked him. He said, Ayya, Tamil fellow, Ayya, I didn't do it. How can you ask me? I said, very well. Then I went back and told Justice Veeramantri. Anyway, all the best. So as it turned out, we went along and we had the good time, because jury there, jurors address you thoroughly enjoy, all in English, We didn't have the language problem in the 60s. So went on, and he got a culpable homicide, not to mind to word, no homicide. So he got 10 years. Now, when it was over, this Black Maria comes to take the fellow. So before he was taken by the prison official, he fell at my feet, worshipped me, and told me, Ayya, I'm all in Tamil, thank you very much. I didn't kill the fellow. So I went in shock. After that, I never took a criminal brief. You see, I just couldn't do it. I said, it's not my. So as it happened, like Gamini said, my father was advocating Jaffna. So all the appeal brief, the proctors who knew me a little fellow, they send you 50 rupees or 25 rupees. I like him. I also want to be on my donkeys, eat and talk. So then that's how I started my practice in the Supreme Court. Because as barristers, you could appear there. You don't need, but the Court of Criminal Appeals sat 3 judges. And as barristers, you go the advocates, you have to wait for 3 years before you are given right of audience in the Court of Criminal Appeals. So it was criminal. There again, it was a brief that what do you call the doc brief sort of thing, they assign counsel. Yeah, the civil appeals, I became junior. That's how I never worked in every chamber sort of permanently. So I started off with these appeal briefs from Jaffna proctors. So I was very thorough. Even now I remember all my land work.
I see.
Yes, very much so. You see, that's how I learned my Thesawalam. I didn't study Thesawalam in English. Thesawalam, Muslim law, everything was. And Mr. Tyagalingam, Mr. Ranganathan, Mr. Dr. Hari Jawad, all of them were seniors. I worked in their chambers. Then, sometime in the 70s, there was this famous Collins versus Bank of Ceylon case in which Collins chairman at that time was my wife's uncle. So he wanted me to, or my ex-wife's uncle, he wanted me to appear. So that's how I came into the commercial area.
I see.
About 10 years later, until then I was all land lawyer. So I would do the whole thing, used to argue things on my own. I still remember them. So when that came, then I went into commercial with him up here. And out that, then I got drawn into commercial work. The Colombo proctors recognize you and they used to come and give you. And then that's how I got into and away from criminal law and came to commercial. All by chance. Like I said, I started law by chance and I'm just carrying on by chance. It's about
So it seems some of the learning we've already taken away from the four of you gentlemen is that success in the legal profession also starts with a fair amount of mischief at youth level. We see that as a common trait. While many of you looked at assigned cases to get on your feet, I'm sure Mr. Asakularatne would have faced a different scenario since he joined the state earlier on in his career. Mr. Asakularatne, could you tell us your experience? Because being in the state, you would probably have, like Mr. Mustafa, have had a large amount of criminal work and been on your feet right in the beginning.
Yeah. So when I applied to become a state council, I faced an interview and I got the information that I have been selected. 5 persons were selected. One was Ashraf and few others, and I was the last and the junior most in that batch. But when the telegrams came to report to work, 4 of them got it. I didn't get it. Somebody else got the 5th place. So when I got really disappointed, and I left the country, and I was working in Dubai. And because by then I had completed my chartered accountancy also in 1 or 2 exams. So I knew some accounts and I was working there. I never got the satisfaction of arguing any case or appearing in any case. It was bothering me. And I turned back and came. When I came, there was a telegram or a letter, just come, asking me to report to work. So when I went there a few days later, and I was told by Mr. Nihal Jayavikram, he was not there. Mr. Mervyn Dialby's legal draftsman was acting. He said, we had just filled in the vacancies. You will have to come in a little later. So he said, we are taking a few more. And in October that year, I got another telegram asking me to come. So I joined the Aegis department. 3 of us reported to work on that day. That is myself, Mr. Raja Fernando, who was Supreme Court judge, and there was a person called Mr. Moses Fernando. So Raja was in the army. And Raja said that he has to get his commissions set aside before he comes, and he went away. And myself, Mr. Moses Fernando didn't bring his coat when he reported to the department. And I am the only one who had gone in a coat. So Mr. Vogellagama called me he was administration. Then he called me and he said, young man, you have to go to courts today. I said, I had never gone to courts. Right. I had not done a single assignment. Then he said, no, somebody has sent the MC appeals back. Somebody has fallen ill. You have to go and do something and come. So then this Mr. Ramanathan saw this problem, by his refusal to go. He is telling me to go. He said, come, I'll tell you what to do, and took me to the library with 8 briefs, all MC appeals. So then he said something, you can understand what I can draft in a half an hour's chat with regard to 8 briefs. So I went and appeared somehow, and then I got up when the cases were called before Mr. Vanam Rajaratnam, Justice Vanam Rajaratnam and Mr. Wilmat Kudasekhar. He asked me, they knew from the way I was answering them, I had not looked at this brief at all. They asked me, Mr. State Counsel, when did you get these briefs? I told him I got these briefs this morning. Is it the practice in the department that you get your briefs about 1 week earlier? How come that you got the briefs today? He said, my lord, I got the appointment this morning. So then they said, okay, we understand what has happened. Now we fixed all the cases. Mr. N.R.M. Dalwatta was opposed to me in most of those cases on that day. So that's how I sort of got the first break to become, to appear in a case. With that experience, I was virtually like being pushed to water to swim. I was pushed into the court. So those days on the way, sometimes Mr. Justice Ratnam used to stop and ask me, Mr. Artsakulathan, have you settled down in the department now? After 1 or 2 weeks, he used to stop. When we met him on his way to court in the corridor, he used to stop and ask me like that. So then, because with the MC appeals, I got on to the criminal side and never did civil work. Never did civil work until I.
So right through your period in the department, you were in the criminal division.
In criminal way, except for a short time when Mr. Sunil De Silva, when he was Attorney General, thought this civil and criminal division is no good. He said everybody must do everything. And then he used to send some civil briefs. I used to shun the civil briefs. I didn't know where to start, where to end. But by that time, I had mastered the art in criminal work. So somehow that practice, it was not successful. So he changed it. I stuck on to the criminal side. In the criminal side, one thing is I must say, I was very cordial with the unofficial bar, very courteous to the bar. And I used to help them in very many ways, like not simple things like, registering a case and giving them the number, not rustifying them when they come to the department. That's all that when I was the head of the department, head of the criminal bar. So that stood me to my benefit, because when I came out, you see, there are a lot of people to feed me with work because of that the courtesy that I extended to the unofficial bar and the relationship I built up while I was there. So that's how I got stuck in this criminal field.
Interesting indeed. In fact, the area of relationships between the bar itself and bench and bar is an area also that I would like to touch on. But first, Mr. Marapana, moving on to yourself, your career was also, as you pointed out, in the Ratnapura area, primarily a civil practice. The change recently to the areas of constitutional law and also the criminal law would have involved a drastic amount of preparation and looking at things anew, because after a while we tend to get comfortable in our space. Could you tell us a little bit about that move and what it entailed?
No, doing constitutional work was not that difficult, because soon as I passed out, I know that lawyers don't start getting work immediately. So I applied to Aquinas to lecture. And I was selected. And I lectured in constitutional law.
Constitutional.
I did that for about 5 years. There are a lot of seniors at the bar now who learned from me and in Aquinas.
So it was something close to your heart at that time.
Yeah, it was. That's
early
how,
stages.
But criminal law, I never wanted to do criminal law. That's a very accidental happening.
I see. On this question, perhaps I can start with you, since I already have you on a question at this time. In terms of, it's a given that the career involves long hours, hard work, updating oneself with the legal developments over time. Mr. Marapana, in your time, in your days, especially as a young lawyer, and all of you really, did not have the benefit of technology the way juniors in the profession have today in terms of references, the speed of reference with word searches online and things. You had to read. I believe even the publication of reported judgments were just a few selected judgments at your hand. Books were not as freely available, perhaps. What would you have to say as a comment on that, Mr. Marapana?
No, you see, working in chambers like Mr. Harry Chavardhanas, he had a wonderful library. And he welcomed his students working in his library. If he wanted to do any reference, and if I didn't have the books, I would also always go there and tell him I want to see something. He says, "Okay, you use my library." So they were good seniors that way. So that's how we got on. But as whenever possible, I used to buy books. I inherited all the, or rather my father gave me all the new law reports. So I had those. Then I had all the CLWs. My father had those also. So that was just my library at that time. But whenever possible, I used to buy textbooks and read. And then you develop your own sort of, directory of cases. You jot down cases that we have appeared in, what someone else has appeared in, and as you come back. And I enjoyed very, very much going and listening to senior counsel in courts. It was a treat. I mean, to have listened to persons like Mr. H.V. Pereira was a treat. I think I tell my juniors, I said, you all have missed it, that this generation, we have missed that. I mean, he was a marvelous advocate. You see the way he never brought books to court. All the principles he knew at the tip of his fingers. He just argues on principle, first principles. It was wonderful. So listening to people, you learn. I mean, today I don't see young lawyers listening in court.
In fact, that's an interesting point, because I had made a note of bringing that up with all of you. With mobile phones today in our hands, invariably, if your case is not being taken, you find a lot of the juniors outside of the court on their phones, or even if they're in the court, on messaging and things like that. And there's very little of the listening to the arguments of others. So it played a big role in your career development. How about in the case of Mr. Carnegies yourself? Was that an important aspect that you looked to for the development of your craft?
Yes, you see, unfortunately, my father practiced in Jaffna. I was still practicing when I took my oaths as silk in '98, you see. So I never had access to these books. He was in Jaffna, I was in Colombo. So as initially I used to buy with the little money that we get, K1 Company was the place they used to go, what's that big building? Gafoor building?
Gafoor, yes.
I don't know, you probably never heard of
Yes,
K1
yes.
Company. They were the standard bookseller. And there was a young man there called Fernando. He now does the at YMBA. Whatever book I want, we'll buy there. In second-hand book, 20 rupees, 10 rupees. I still use them, some of the early books. Otherwise, since I never really worked in anybody's chambers as such, all my research was done in our library. Our library was fantastic those days. Any book you want, now it's all moth written and all that, but all the old reports you would get. And sometimes AG department also, they used to help us. And all the work was done, we had no computers. Your research was entirely yours. And when I came back from England, we went by boat and came by boat. At Gibraltar, at Aden, I bought a portable Hermes typewriter. So all the work was done by us on typewriters. 5 carbon sheets, 6 sheets of tissue paper, and all your submissions and everything was done by, so which means a lot of work involved. You see, that helped you a lot because I used to write and then type it, so that helped you, that made you, work harder, remember things. You see, no easy access. No, I often tell my junior, you bloody fellows, you are very lucky. You don't need to go anywhere. Anything you want, you go to Google. Google will tell you how to cook your prawn curry. Will tell you Japanese prawn curry or Indian prawn. Everything is there. It wasn't so in our time. So then you used to listen to, as Gamini said, I used to go and listen briefly days. I learned my public law at that time, writs and things, from listening to Mr. H.L. De Silva. We used to go there, and he said, those days we used to use a monitor's, a big Excel book with government people, and they had some name for it, and we make notes. I still have those old books where I made notes of cases in appeals and, things like that. So that's how we learned. And I had no, since I did not work with any particular chamber, I used to work as junior counsel, but not as, of a particular chamber. So all my research was done. I remember I learned my admiralty law, which I came to love, from Mr. Mahesh Kanagasundaram. He taught me. He used to be there, there used to be library where the district courts are there. That's where the library were now, those days. And there was a reference section, which was very quiet. Nobody started talking, nothing. All the reference books were there. And one day I was happened to be, he called me in as a junior to one of the admiralty. And then from him, I learned admiralty work. So we learned from our seniors. It's a Ranganath will tell you, he saw by Sarkar and evidence. So all his work is Sarkar fat book. So I also bought a Sarkar. I still have my old Sarkar. A wonderful book. That's how you learn. A lot of hard work, son. A lot of hard work. And we were fortunate to have...
On a personal note, I recall the first time I was making a submission on a company winding up matter in the district court a few months after I had taken oaths. I recall referring to the company as the debtor company, and you tapped me on my shoulder and said, company sought to be wound up, would be more appropriate. And I recall the kind of guidance that you were willing to give us at that time, even though the matter did not concern you at all. Mr. Mustafa, I wonder your experience in learning from others. Was there a lot of guidance that you received, especially when you were in the private bar?
As he said, I also didn't have the privilege of being attached to any chambers as such.
Yes.
So I had to learn most of the things on my own. But I used to be retained as junior to some of the eminent counsel at that time. And I must say I learned a lot from them. But it was fascinating to attend their conferences. But I do remember going to Mr. Tyagalingam with a very prominent Muslim gentleman. We went through the accounts and he found there was some falsification of accounts. He turned around to the client and said, Kia pang, Mama Horek. So that man said, kept on saying, Mama Horek. 3 times he made him say, Horek ni correct. Then ultimately, after consultation finished, we came out and the client told me, and he said, I don't want Mr. Tyagalingam. I don't take him elsewhere. So that, we learned on the job, as it were. My mentors were Mr. Pulamanayaga, Mr. Tyagalingam, Mr. Navarat Raja. George Chita used to occasionally do a criminal case with him. But I was fascinated by the knowledge and the compassion and the kindness that person like Navarat Raja showed. All of them had a rough exterior, but they had hearts of gold. And they could accommodate juniors, they could relate to juniors, and you could go to them when you had a problem. So you had access to their libraries if you needed them. So I didn't feel the need. But of course, every time I got a case on some new speciality, on some new aspect of law, I used to buy a book out of the fees, and I built up my library as a result.
Right. So you invested back in terms of building the library and then, of course, referring to it as well, not just buying the books, which some of us feel is sufficient. One also needs to read. Was there in your time, did you spend
we couldn't download them. In our time, we couldn't download them like now.
Yeah.
But we had access to all the seniors' libraries. They were so kind. And therefore, we didn't feel the need for buying books as such. But where there was a particular case and you felt you needed a particular text, we used to buy it.
Mr. Mustafa, any particular instance that you might be able to relate of the interaction or the relationship between bench and bar that stands out in your mind?
You know, one thing is you must always be polite to judges, there's no question about it. But you must also sometimes cultivate the art of being offensive without being rude. Because you get occasionally cuss a judge, occasional, very, very rarely. I do remember an occasion in which there was a judge in the Court of Appeal who got all the cases called, and he said, you must give cases within 1 month, dates within 1 month. And I happened to be a deputy president, the president was Mr. Dalwat. Cases were called, and we were determined not to submit. Mr. Dalwat, of course, hummed and hawed, and ultimately took the date. Ultimately, it came to me. I said, no, I was unable to give a date within 1 month. The judge was exasperated. He turned around to me and said, Mr. Musa, you must give me a date within 1 month. And I said very politely and very submissively, all gentlemen who would possibly give dates within 1 month have joined the judiciary. So immediately he gave me a date. So if you have a little humor and sound humble and submissive, but you can be offensive without being rude.
Mr. Asukularatna, would you have an experience that you might want to relate or share with us, either within the bar itself or a bench and bar incident that comes to mind?
Not really involving me, but there are instances where I was witness to. One funny incident is when I was prosecuting in the High Court, there was this Mr. Upali D.S. Gunawardhan was presiding. And there was constant quarrel between him and Mr. Chintu Abesekara, who had a little beard in the chin. So that time, the courts were very free. Suddenly walked into the courthouse. I think some of the one goat has escaped and walked into the courthouse and he made a sound. Then he asked the state counsel, Mr. State Counsel, then the state counsel said, it's a goat. It's a goat. Then looking at Chintu Abesekara, he asked, which goat? He asked, which goat? So that was that went off that way, and constantly used to pick on Abesekara and say something. It's wrong for him if he brings books or if he doesn't book. One day he was reading a book, and as he came on the bench, I asked, Mr. Abesekara, what are you reading? He said, I'm just reading a book. What's the title of the book? He asked. He said, I'm reading a book, How to Control, the book title, How to Control Impossible Judges. That was the title of the book.
Interesting story.
So he got his chance. So he got his chance to return it, you see. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Balapana, you had mentioned that you used to ride with Mr. L.C. Seniviratna and others to Ratnapura. I'm sure you all must have also been opposed to each other. Could you tell us a little bit about the relationship that you have, in the bar, and also how that relationship switches in court and then reverts back when you're outside the court?
Nowadays I find that if you talk to the opposing counsel, the clients get excited. I mean, that's the culture I find in Colombo. But in Ratnapura, for 25 years, Chandra Seniviratna, myself, and Mr. Premaratna, we went together in each other's cars. We should travel together, and we are opposed to each other in court. Not once did any of our clients ever say anything. You see that, and we go at each other, we shout at each other, all that happens. But we stuck to our case. But it often happens that while we are walking, going to court, we will talk about, I will say, Chandra, what's that? We are having this case today, this such and such. Can't we settle it? So Chandra will say, Gami, I think it's a fit case for settlement. What do you suggest? So I will then say, I have looked at it and I think this is a good suggestion. And Chandra will say, I will put it to my client. Or he will suggest the thing and I will say, I'll put it to my client. Or Prema will put it. So as a result of that, we settled most of our cases. That relationship was such a friendly relationship that we go together, we do our cases opposing each other, but we talk of the cases and then we suggest settlements and then someone accepts. It was a wonderful relationship. But sometimes the judge used to travel with us. That was another thing. So then we can't talk about cases. So we never spoke about cases. We just took the judge and we talked about other things, but never talked about these cases. And our clients, I must say, they never raised any query about this. How three lawyers can travel together and appear against each other in court and shout at each other sometimes, very rarely. We never, I think this shouting at counsel is an absolutely stupid thing. I don't know. I used to tell people who used to come and raise their voice against me, look, I'm not fighting you. I'm just doing a case. So there is no need for you and I to fight. You see? But I also find one practice which I didn't like, where lawyers abuse the other party's client. You see, the fact that a lawyer wears a black coat doesn't give him a right to insult another man, any person in court. So those ethics must be, I think the Bar Association or whoever must train these young lawyers also. And people, a man comes to court not to get insulted by the opposing lawyer. You can't call him names. You have to respect him. You can fight your case, but not by making insulting remarks at that man.
Thank you, Mr. Bhayapada. Mr. Carnegie, I'm sure. Sorry?
Can I just pick up on that, Ravi? Because I find this culture has changed. We had an atmosphere in which we used to fight each other in court. Sometimes we say the nastiest things, sometimes, occasionally, but we remain the best of friends. We don't carry it outside. But now I find, unfortunately, it spills over. Why is that, Adam? Probably you'll be able to help us.
I don't know, perhaps the intensity of the matter, maybe a lack of exposure to the fact that counsel can actually maintain a very good relationship with each other at a personal level, and it need not cross over into the boundaries of the work that you do. I think there's a lack of appreciation of that overall, and maybe it stems from a lack of exposure of seeing that sufficiently in the seniors in terms of a lack of interaction, a lack of training in that area. So those could possibly be some of the reasons that we see, and also perhaps the extent of competitiveness in that sense has spilled over into the private domain. I see what you mean. It is a lot more prevalent now than we used to see back in the day when even we were juniors.
No, Adam, the elephant in the room is examples are not set properly by the seniors. I think we should acknowledge that. In our time, though there were exchanges, hot exchanges, as Kamini said, at the end of the day, they all come together. Very often, many years, I went with the Agalingam from Colombo to Kandy to do a case, and very often, like here, like Kamini said, Mr. C.R. Gunaratna appears against us. And they had a jolly old fight in Kandy. But they come back together. And they exchange jokes about their wives and all kinds of things. I sit in the front seat, listen to the story. It was camaraderie was there. And, fundamentally, you respect your opponent. you respect another member. They even respect the juniors, you know. They treated you well, treated you, even the judges on the bench, you know, those days, when you are a young counsel and they know you are trying to do your best. I remember in a particular case, Mr. Justice Vijayathilaka, approached me, was very senior counsel, I think from the state. And I was arguing again some MC appeal, one of those briefs you get, you know, when I was very young at early at the bar. He told me, counsel, isn't this the point you are trying to make? I said, yes, my lord, that wasn't the point. I didn't even know the point. So he puts the point into my mouth and calls upon the other side to answer, and then he holds with you. You know, that kind of, you know, in English law, they say you are given a leg up. Judges used to give that leg up to juniors. Now its whole thing is different, and seniors also must respect each other and also respect the juniors, because when you were junior, if they think you are okay, you're doing well, they help you. Adam, you know, they help you very often. I've had hints from Tyagalingam, you are talking too loud. You put short questions. Very often when you go with him, he will train me by you cross-examine. And while I am there, he will correct me. Or he say, you lead the evidence. You see, that kind of helping was done because they found that you are willing to work, and, you know, that kind of thing is lost. Now, as you said, maybe they are competitive, but also examples are not set, perhaps. And if we behave properly, others will take from us, I guess. And the judges also, old days judges, in somehow, I think maybe pure nostalgia, you miss their time. They also very accommodative and more understanding, I guess. I don't know, you know.
So, in fact, I'm reminded of the very first appeal I argued before Justice Senanayake. He knew it was my first appeal because it was just a couple of months after I had taken oaths. And so he kept my matter down. He cleared the entire courtroom and he said, now, son, what can I do for you? And that's how he started off. And I never felt more comfortable because I was on pins when I had started off. And he made it really easy for me to start off. So the profession itself is one that has a fair amount of stress and tension because you're a lot of the time taken unawares. You have to be ready. It calls on a lot of skill, concentration. What about work-life balance? I know you, Mr. Carnegies, are very interested in the arts and music, and spend a lot of time with the arts. How important have you found the work-life balance to be?
That is very, very important, you know, because not only that, you know, extracurricular activity they call it, but not only that, also you should be interested in a wide variety of subjects. There's so much to be learned from not just the law, outside the law. There's so much material outside the law which you learn, which comes in appreciation of people, especially in the original court, cross-examining people, understanding people of different backgrounds, why they click one way, why this one doesn't click the other way. What is it that you can learn about the backgrounds of people? You know, that matters a lot. That you can read there are lots of books on people and events and histories within Sri Lanka itself, which is an important area to study. That's why you get archaeological studies and architectural studies, and you know that helps you expand your horizon, to expand the way you approach people. Because at the end of the day, as I tell my juniors now, you are in fact marketing a product. As a lawyer, you have a case of your client. It has been marketed so that somebody understands it. So in understanding that, because all Mr. Nadesan, I will tell you a story if I don't know if I'm making sense. You know, many years ago, after a long time, somebody retained Mr. Nadesan to do a case against Mr. Sam Kaddi in the Commercial High Court. That was the district court. Now it's all High Court. The last court on the district court, old quadrangle, was a commercial court. Miss A.L.M. Fernando was there. So Nadesan, I was a junior, he called me. He said, who is the judge? What sort of fellow is he? I said, he's a nice man, blah, blah, blah. So we'll go one day and watch him. So 1 week before the trial, he came to Ulster. Nobody knew him, and sat there with me and watched him. He said, good. And he said, you must always study your judge. All your law won't tell because you are marketing a product to a judge. Study your judge.
School of realism.
Yeah. Then on the day of the trial, now this is true. Huh? The day of the trial, it's a company law matter. Mr. Sam Kadirgamar, as you know, comes with bundles of books. Nadezan had no book, just his brief. And he has a habit of making a submission, going out and pulling a cigarette. He can't, I don't know whether you, I think fights, I don't know, somebody would have seen you, I don't know, you might know. So what happened was he made a long submission about Mr. A.L.M. Fernando. And having done that, he went outside pulling his cigarette. Nadesan got up and I don't want to go to the nitty-gritties of it. And he said, the submission was wrong for the simple reason that that is not the section that is applicable, and moved to have the action dismissed. So he agreed and dismissed it. So when Sam came in, case was over. So he didn't know what happened. He said, Carnegies, come, let's go. He ran out of court. Those days. And the judges, they were very quick. They did the written submission, that everything was done morally. And you learn. That is another thing the junior don't know now is nobody talks. Everything is written submissions. How can you expect judges to read volumes and volumes of papers? This because of pressure work or something. That's where the advocacy is a lost art. People draft a plaint, then they say, okay, then you say written submissions and be done with it. This is the Supreme Court, even the higher court, those days, Mr. Harjavadana versus Tyagalingam, Mr. Harjavadana versus Ranganathan, so on and so forth. They'll take one case and go on from day to day. You don't have that. And you can sit and very often when you are briefless, you go and sit and listen to them. And we are always, I always had a notebook. I note down case law, that is, and mostly those, as I said, initially all land law. I still have those books. Once in a while, when some land matters come, servitudes, and just 2 weeks ago, somebody asked me about it. I brushed it and took it out, and there were cases which I have argued on those. You see, so there's no magic in the law if you are willing to learn. And you learn best when you are listening to seniors who speak the law correctly. But that thing is gone. Very few we have the opportunity to, we got so lazy, you can borrow from cut and paste and that and this. Sometimes you find that your language in somebody else's brain. I say, how come? Then you don't know whether it's your draft or somebody else's. I think all of you would have experienced that, So where's the learning? You see, that is something that is lost. I don't know, for some reason, I think it's a blooming internet which came and spoiled everything. Your ability to think is gone. You just copy and paste what you think is relevant. Without that, those you have to do it yourself. You got to learn it, as I said, you got to learn it. We couldn't afford books, we had to borrow books, and then you write by hand and you type it, sweat. Those days we never had air-conditioned rooms in our houses, you couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it, My first billeting was on top of a garage. When I started practice, I lived down COVID place in Columbus because I had no home in Columbus, my parents, everything, Jaffna. I let out a room, a single room, you see, which was the top of a garage. Parked the car down. My dad bought me a second-hand Triumph Herald. It was 9,000 rupees then. Way back, lovely car. Park it down, go upstairs. And there was a little teeny-weeny area, which sort of a lounge. You couldn't see clients at home. Nobody came. You had no clients. So, and the other one was a room and a bathroom, a small veranda where you can put a kitchen. You see, after I got married, first year of marriage was spent on that. In fact,
Wow.
You see, so that kind of thing teaches you a lot of things, how to get along with people, how to respect, how to learn, how to absorb. And that's your character. That exposure, I think, very important to understand. So at all times, you need to fundamentally must respect the other side, no matter who. Because after all, he's also doing a job, no?
Sure.
Nothing personal there. So therefore, as Gamini said, shouting and that and this is never works. Only you upset yourself because you stop thinking. Yeah, Faiz says your grandchild is behind. Great-grandson or grandson?
My great-grandson. I think the problem the point you made is good. I think people have got very consumerist now. No, that is... No, we have appeared even for 3150, we have appeared when we were young. But now you see, no junior will do that. No? The burset is meant for them should come within a week. That's the problem. No? They don't sit and learn.
Yes.
They won't buy their time, and they won't make an effort. I remember when Mr. Nade, I remember case I had Mr. Nadesan. We went through it, we poured over it. There was some big, somebody in the commercial world who had charged misappropriation. It rested on the evidence of one single man who had given evidence in the non-summary, but had died by the time that had come up. So he went through the evidence. The case rested entirely on that. So he told me, I say he went through, I went through, I couldn't pick on it. He told me, I say, if the shoe pinches, you must cut it off. So I was wondering why. He said, this little bit of evidence is the only damaging part of our case. Unfortunately, they're putting a dying deposition in the trial court of evidence given at the non-summary. Nadesan went to it and there is certificate should be issued by the client, but not there. So that was ruled out. The entire case collapsed. So they're prepared to work hard and they discover things within the brief itself. People are not prepared to do that.
The studying of the brief itself. Mr. Marupana, a question for you. Again, going back to the work-life balance, also a person who's worked terrifically hard, but also one that values your time off. In fact, I'm informed of a journey you took once in driving all the way from the UK to Sri Lanka. Can you comment on how you achieved that balance between enjoying your time, enjoying the profession, and also working hard in the profession?
After some time, when you start getting work, then you must decide, are you going to work like mad in this profession and get embroiled in it? Or are you going to live your life also? You see, after I got married and had a child, I decided, look, I'm not going to work 5 days a week. I always kept either the Monday or the Friday off. I always tell the judge, look, I can't work on this day. I didn't say we always say our diary is full. So we can always duck any day. So I said Mondays, or Fridays in the week, I used to take off. So I did a 4-day week.
But the 4 days must have been quite hectic.
It's hectic. That's why I worked flat out those days. I never gave consultations on the weekend. Never. After some time, after about 10 years in practice, I never gave. Because I always thought I used to always go out with the family. All my free time was spent with the family. My entire career till today, the free time, now this COVID has come, otherwise we can't spend a weekend out. Otherwise, every weekend I leave the house and go. So I devote it to my family. And I think that it served me very well. And I benefited tremendously with that arrangement. But apart from that, since you talked about this interacting with judges, you see, and Kanan saying you must study the judge. I just want to say one small incident which I am personally aware of. You see, I was junior to Mr. Sam Kadirgama in a case. Mr. Sam Kadirgama thought that he should take a legal objection at the beginning of he was a wonderful man. You see, everything he takes very casually and all that, but very serious, very hard worker. So he wanted to take this objection about the issue was whether when the minister refers a matter from a labor matter to an arbitrator, Section 4 or something in the Industrial Dispute Act says, if the minister is of the opinion that there is an industrial dispute, so he can refer it. Now he has not said he is of the opinion. He said in terms of Section 4(1) or whatever, I refer it to. So he took this objection. Now in his chambers, I told him, sir, we have a good case on the facts. Why take this objection? And he told me, as a Marpana, have you played any games? This is a team thing, this law. Have you played any game? I said, no, sir, I have not played any games. Then Mr. Shanmuganathan, who was my lecturer, he was also a junior in his chambers then. He said, no, he has played all the games. So then he said, I am surprised. So then we argued this matter. He argued this matter before the Labour Tribunal. He overruled it. Then he retained Mr. Gresham from England, Queen's Counsel. He came down special to argue this appeal. Appeal was listed before Justice Abhay Sundara, who was the legal draftsman earlier. Now, first thing that Mr. Gresham said was, this Industrial Disputes Act is very badly drafted. Now, Abhay Sundara was the draftsman. You see, my God, that put Justice Abhay Sundara completely flabbergasted. He said, what is wrong with this? I'm very curt. Then he said, no, this. I said, those are your submissions. Within 10 minutes, he shut him up and said, I have heard the submissions, case dismissed. You see, so, I mean, if he knew that Mr. Justice Abhay Sundara was the author of the industrial disputes, he wouldn't have said that. So, it's very true. You have to study the judge.
Another important area that we need to touch on, and I'll direct the question to Mr. Asukuraratne first, is the area of ethics in the profession and integrity in the profession. Mr. Asukuraratne, would you like to comment on that and draw anything from personal experience in this regard? A comment especially for our younger members of the profession.
Following ethics is a very, very important thing. And not only should follow, you should emulate it so that others will learn from it. We have all learned from our seniors. I think in that regard, I owe a lot to my two former seniors, Mr. Erdi Pereira, President's Council, and Mr. Lalit Ratnadali, President's Council, under whom I apprenticed. And I was at the initial stages of my career, I worked with him. So, being ethical is a very, very important thing there. And most importantly, you must pass it on to the juniors. Then only the ethics will remain in the profession. So I should add that our seniors must, first of all, they have to be ethical in their conduct. They should know what they are talking about and what they are adhering to. Now, today we find simple thing is, although I'm fairly senior in the profession, if I am seated in the front row, if any of my seniors come, my seniors know about it, I get up and offer the seat. So that's our ethical conduct, just respecting seniors. But you go to the magistrate's court, you don't find it. Sometimes they may not know who you are. Sometimes they know and they pretend not to know. So I think that's a very important thing that the juniors must know. Otherwise, there will not be future in this profession. We all respect our seniors, continue to respect our seniors, because we learn from them. So that's very important. I think following the ethics of the profession. So
thank you.
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Asukuraratne. Very, very valuable comment about seniors. We see that in the courts far too often. very often a case where someone needs to point out to a junior that a senior is here and to offer the seat, which should not be the case.
Yeah. So
Mr. Mustafa,
it's sometimes very embarrassing. So people should know who the senior, at least who the President's Council who practice in court, they should know. To that extent, they should know. So that's an important thing for the juniors to note, that they have to be ethical in this profession, and not only offering a seat in addressing court, in not annoying judges, and also being truthful to court. I have seen instances where the lawyers are not truthful. They, in the sense that when you make a legal submission, you make one submission for one case, and you entirely a different, totally different. Don't care about what the law is. You make another submission for another case. I have seen it in the unofficial bar, as well as sadly in the state also. So I think that kind of thing, this attitude of winning the case at any cost must stop. You see, a lot of people in the unofficial bar and on the official bar, they think that we are there to win the case at any cost. I think the injustice or justice of the case is not a matter for the counsel. He has to fight his cause. That's the most important thing, is to fight his cause. If he has fought his cause very well, he can sleep well, because he has done everything that is possible for the case.
Within the framework of ethics.
If he gets involved in the justice or otherwise of it, then you go at a tangent. That's what happens in most of the cases. They think that now we don't hear of midstream crashing in these criminal areas. Very hardly we see midstream crashing. Those days, midstream crashing takes place 2 or 3 times a day, because judges would tell this Eustace proceeding in this case, that is the virtual end of the case. Used to crash this case and take up the next case. But today what happens? Today what happens is, you put the ball back in the judge's court. Somehow you want the judge to make an order, and you get out of the problem. So that is, I'm not blaming the young state council. Young state council also, they are pressurized. Their seniors are pressurizing them. They have to write reports to give explanation. But the attitude must change. It must come from the top. The role of the council is not to win a case at any cost. You have to direct. You are an officer of court. You have a duty to direct the court properly. And sometimes, sometimes I have seen, when I have done it myself, when the law is being interpreted properly, or when you know there is a case law which has decided the other way, it's your duty to get up, even if you are not in the case, to get up and properly direct court as to that there is such a thing, and alert court in that regard. That's your duty. So that doesn't happen. The worst thing is, you make one submission for one day, then exactly you go and make the opposite submission the other day. So where is your ethics? Where is your ethical conduct, ethical duty stand? So as much as you must not mislead court, as you must also learn, be helpful to court in guiding the court properly. This happens most not in the higher courts very much. This happens in the magistrates court, because I say so because I practice in those courts and I see what's happening in those courts.
Thank you. Very significant point, Mr. Asgulatna. Very significant point. Mr. Mustafa, your comments about the importance of establishing your integrity before the judges, especially since you've been in the higher courts a long time.
I said you should be able to command the confidence as a judge. You must be candid must be a disclosure. I remember when I had a matter during the JVP times, when we couldn't get at the certified copy of the proceedings from the law court. It came up before OSN. And I told him this was the case, and I said there's a fundamental error and moved for a stay order. He gave me a stay order without a scrap of paper before him, purely on my statement of the case. So that the judges also prepared to trust us. But I think that trust between bench and bar has also got displaced now. The seniors set a very bad, don't set an adequate example to juniors, and the quality of juniors also changed. There was an apprentice who came to my chambers and I had him for some time. He said his uncle had some case, commercial matter. He brought the books. I went through the accounts and said, we can't sustain it. I was taken aback when he said to me, I'll bring another fresh set of books. So that's the type of chap who's now joining the profession. So that's I had to chase him away.
Instead of finding a counsel who might be able to justify it, he chases the books.
Are you sure it's true in one of your films?
No. That man is now taking notes. He's practicing.
Good Lord. Oh my God.
He doesn't look me I love. Yes. So you see,
gentlemen,
the culture has changed. I don't know why. I don't know where the error is, but perhaps it's up to us seniors to set an example, and interact and reach out to the juniors and guide them.
Gentlemen, time is also catching up with us. I was wondering, perhaps to summarize, if we were to look at, if I were to ask each of you to think of maybe a word or just one sentence that might express your view about a very important aspect of being in this profession. I'll give you a few moments to maybe think about it, and whenever any of you are ready, you would like to start off. I won't direct the order on this. Just a word or a sentence that sums up what to you is really important as a message you'd like to leave behind for the younger members of this profession.
An easy answer, Adam. Simply, integrity is important. Ethics and proper conduct is basic. I don't know whether these subjects are taught at law college. I never studied there. And there might be, you should teach them. Not only teach them, give them examples of if it doesn't happen that way, what's the consequence to you as a counsel? Because as Faiz said, judges also must respect you. They respect you only if they know who you are and what your reputation is. At the end of the day, your reputation matters a lot because you will be judged by that. It's not what you think of yourself. It is important that what others think of you from your own conduct. So that is where the ethics come, integrity comes. That if you get up, they will know this man will not misrepresent the law to us. But Rienzi said, it's far too common to see, either through innocence or ignorance or deliberation, sometimes you get some fantastic submissions made.
Sometimes part of an authority cited, part of an authority cited, the rest of it not.
I am telling you, I never done that. I didn't scared. Because if they find that you only read one line on the other, how shameful it will be for you, man. You can't, I don't know, some of us old fellows, you can't bring yourself to do that simply because of simply because your own conscience prevents you from doing it. So at the end of the day, who you are matters. If it matters to you, if you know who you are, no? Out of that comes the whole thing. So integrity and rest. And other thing is you must respect the other man. It's not difficult. Huh? Please respect the other man. Yeah.
In fact, there is a comment on our chat from Nalini Jayatilaka, attorney at law, about the importance of bringing ethics into the law college syllabus as well. Mr. Marapana, a line from you as a parting thought, rather.
No, integrity is all important. Otherwise, it's you must have people of integrity in this profession. You see, those days, I might tell you that before you took oaths, during the time Chief Justice Basnayaka was functioning, they used to get a police report about people who are entering the profession. And I know of people who were not allowed to take oaths. They had passed the exam, but they were not allowed to take oaths. So all that has gone overboard. And if you're going to be appointed a judge, there was so much scrutiny, whether you're suited. They took at your family background. I know people who have not been selected judges because of little things in their family background. You see, that is the extent to which they went in the old days. And but there came a time when nobody joined the judiciary. Then, of course, I suppose they had to do something about that also. To fill it with these papers. But integrity is the most important. Without integrity, there is nothing.
Thank you, Ms. Marapana. And Mr. Mustafa, any particular thought in a word or a line that you'd like to leave behind?
I think we have to cultivate our devotion to ethics. At them, is it being taught at law college now? Is it a subject? In our time, we were not taught ethics, but it came to us naturally because it was passed on from generation to generation. But now you don't have the guru relationship, and unless it is taught at law college, it can't be passed on. The area in which we have to concentrate is ethical conduct.
Thank you. I think Mr. Sukuraratne has already touched on this. We've had a wonderful evening, a wonderful discussion, and the journey that you've taken us through in your careers has been a real eye-opener to us.
I like to tell the juniors that people who are watching, that road to success is difficult. It's hard work. Everyone would agree it's really, really hard work to reach success. It's a serious game. You must not be disappointed about disappointments, setbacks. You see, bad comments you hear sometimes from judges, bad comments sometimes you hear from colleagues, sometimes moves by your own colleagues to put you in trouble. You must have also experienced that. But you must not it's a stayer's game. You be sure of your path, you do what is right, and with hard work, you will reach where you want to go. That's what I want to tell
Thank you, sir.
The juniors who are watching this program.
Thank you. And I think to add to that also, the fact that there is a curve or a time frame that it takes, and I think Mr. Mustafa mentioned it earlier, there sometimes is an unnatural rush to get to that pinnacle a little too early, which also is something that then involves the sacrifice of more important things, and invariably one of them is ethics.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the wisdom that you've shared. It has been an absolute honor for me to host this and engage in the dialogue with you. I'm going to hand back to our compeer Uma to bring this session to a close. Thank you, Mr. Mustafa. Thank you, Mr. Carnegies, Mr. Marapana, and Mr. Asura.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Uma.
Yes, I hope everybody can hear me.
Thank you. Yes.
Right. As they say, all good things must come to an end. So has today's webinar. Without a doubt, I can say that today's webinar or this discussion was indeed one of the best webinars, one of the most insightful yet entertaining and interesting webinars we've had. And we are extremely, extremely grateful to the eminent panel of experts who joined us today. I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Faiz Mustafa, President's Council, Mr. Carnegies President's Council, Mr. Rianzi Kalaratna President's Council, Mr. Gamini Marapana President's Council, and of course our fabulous moderator, Mr. Muhammad Adam Ali, Attorney at Law. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I would also like to thank the Management Committee, the Seminars Committee yet again, and everybody who has made this webinar and all the other webinars up until the 50th webinar a great success. So thank you all for joining. We hope to see you all next week. And we hope you join all the other webinars the BASL will be running throughout the week as well. Hope all of you have a great evening. Stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Goodbye, legends.